Welcome in, friends. I've been practicing with my voice lately after my visit with the ENT doctors. I will give you a little update. They want to tell me it was COVID, that there was some vocal cord damage that likely occurred from the COVID virus. And as a result of overcompensation, I supposedly built muscle memory and just continued overcompensating. So basically, I forgot how to speak. And so now I will be visiting a speech pathologist to work on retraining the muscles that help the vocal cords open and shut, because mine are not closing adequately to produce adequate sound all the time. And it's not that they can't, it's that the doctor said it's sort of a mind over matter situation. So I've been really trying to think about mentally the vocal cords actually closing when I speak. And when I slow down, it sort of helps. So, last week, I read to you or shared with you my piece on, it's entitled How Step 11 Impacts Neurodivergence and Mental Wellness. This week's piece is how Step 3 supports neurodivergent overwhelm. Let's get into it. I've come to believe that the spiritual practices used in 12-step programs weave well into all other areas of life. But specifically for today, I'm addressing my ADHD traits. My nervous system interacts with these practices on a new rhythm and frequency. I understand today the spiritual practices I learned in recovery before discovering ADHD are exactly the medicine I need for regulation. But when I hyperfocus on my symptoms or traits, I forget about these things that actually help. This leads to increased dysregulation. The identification I found with ADHD gives me language to talk about what I am experiencing, but my practices give me the healing and the manageability. Have you ever found yourself in a social situation where you could feel your overwhelm creeping in? Mine lives in my spine, and I like the analogy of the scientific tube thermometer, because for me, second by second, it's as if the red climbs up the tube as my nervous system gets hotter or increasingly dysregulated. Words become harder to find, becoming fewer and fewer. Thinking gets cloudy. It is harder to focus, and ideas become a blur. Suddenly, what to do next feels distorted. Everything is too loud, too bright, too emotional, and there is too much social demands. And we feel frozen. But on the inside, we are screaming. All we want to do is cry. People are talking to us, but we don't know how or can't answer. Children require your attention, but it's being pulled in so many directions. It begins to feel like the best option would be to just run, get up, and leave without explanation. The tube thermometer is about to explode, and no one around you can see any of this happening inside of us. This experience is of the highly masked individual, where the outward expressions do not match the internal chaos. This is an example of the survival brain loop phenomenon. It's a state that our nervous system drops into when it believes we are in danger. The danger, quote unquote, could be an email, a feeling, a task, a memory, an environment, or even a craving, like an addictive coping mechanism or substance. But I think it's safe to say that running away might work temporarily, but it is not a sustainable reaction to situations that arise for us daily. The next part is a recount of my quote-unquote almost shut down at a restaurant with my partner and my son. It describes the ADHD overwhelm and what tools I used to cope. I often rely on the mask to push through many social situations. And in this experience, my mask went offline. And something happens when we begin to find safe spaces and become more aware of our neurotype. The mask begins to fall away organically and more frequently. There is a con to this process because sometimes we can find ourselves in situations where the mask is not accessible anymore for whatever reason. And in this particular situation, at the restaurant, I had to call it back. But before I was able to do so, I had to micro-regulate. This was a very new concept for me. Micro-regulation for neurodivergence refers to the use of small moment-to-moment strategies that help stabilize the nervous system and emotions before they escalate into full dysregulation. It's about catching stress early and applying subtle adjustments like sensory tools, grounding techniques, or micro breaks to maintain balance. Micro-regulation intervenes early with small, manageable steps to prevent snowballing into shutdowns or meltdowns. So, what did I do as I noticed overwhelm rising? As soon as I felt like running, I applied a couple techniques that help every time. Quietly to myself, I began to have a communion with quote-unquote God or spirit or life force energy. And I say quietly to myself, I command all energies which are not mine to leave now. I repeat this a few times, followed by an internal dialogue, an internal drop into my heart space. This all happens very quickly. Moments, seconds. It serves as a sort of protection or energy clearing to promote returning to neutral or my baseline. Instead of thinking that I must achieve regulation in the moment, I was able to see it on a spectrum. My system was maxed out. So the goal became to reduce harm rather than completely regulate. I gave myself permission to pause the full regulation process. My system is over capacity. I don't need to fix this right now. What I did do was utilize the coloring pages and the crayons on the table. And I repeated my silent mantra, I am safe, over and over, while I colored on the paper. I stopped caring about what I thought everyone else needed from me in order to reduce the social demand overwhelm. It's not that regulation is impossible. It is that the form of regulation changes when we are maxed out. Instead of calming, it might be about containing, softening, or simply waiting until the wave passes. This is what I did. I contained, softened, and waited for the wave to pass with a couple small strategies. And once I did this, I was able to call back in the mask that was temporarily offline. This enabled me to quote-unquote act my way through the rest of the dinner because I knew full regulation could be achieved later on. Now, this is not to say that my micro-regulation allowed me to have a good time, because it was far from that. Masking comes with an overtaxation cost every time, but used sparingly, it can be our greatest weapon for times just like the one I described. The everyday moments of overwhelm. The micro-regulation followed by the use of the mask allowed me to pause the escalation process of the overwhelm and avoid a meltdown in public. Furthermore, I was able to avoid complete shutdown at home. This was a small miracle for me. But how does this example live within step 3? Step 3 says, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of quote unquote God as we understood him. Step 3 is about surrendering the panic, not the power. I love this. It's so exciting. This step is often misunderstood as giving up control. But really, what it's saying is, I'm handing over the part of this moment that is too big for my survival brain to hold. And it works because it interrupts that survival brain loop. This is magic. This creates an interruption in the pattern. And a new cycle is formed. Pause, soften, reorient, and reconnect to something bigger than the moment. The ritual I explained did this. The command interrupted the loop. The heart drop shifted my physiology. And the mantra reoriented my identity. And the coloring anchored me in safety. This is step 3 in somatic language. Wow. Step 3 creates a surrender to source, a higher power, or our higher selves. In this surrender, we take back power to address energy imbalances through conscious intention. When something is so true to me, I get these tingling sensations in my fingertips, sometimes in my toes, and that is happening right now. The invocation that I spoke, all energies which are not mine, leave now, is a surrender of the panic, the overwhelm, the noise, the distortion. And unlike passivity or helplessness, it is a strategic release so my system could get back online. That is step 3. It moved me out of helplessness and shifted the feeling of powerlessness into action to help myself. I believe that when we sit in helplessness and powerlessness with no repair strategies, we only create more of that energy. But if we can take actionable steps to reclaim the energy that is present, source energy responds with more of that. And somehow we regain some control over what feels like is out of our control. Surrender creates agency. When we stop fighting the overwhelm, we regain the ability to act. The core of the third step says, I am not powerless. I'm supported. I can take the next right action. And this essentially is reducing the perceived harm, and it helps us return back to ourselves. It's such an incredible aha moment to realize this. And I hope that this message can help someone struggling with similar challenges. I'm encouraging everyone engaging with this space to please share my messages with anyone who might have a need or a resonance with this type of content. Next week's episode is, I think, going to pivot out of my recovery series into a meditation series. And I likely will be sharing a guided meditation with all of you. And I hope you will join me in that space as well. May our hearts be open and our souls free. I'm River. Thank you for being here with me today. Enjoy the rest of your day.